The Toronto Raptors just missed out on signing one of the top free agents that's still available on the open market, as apparently Dennis Schroder was this close to signing with the Raptors before he ended up going to LA. So I'm going to break down that story. Additionally, we have a couple of current and former Toronto Raptors balling out over in EuroBasket as Team Spain has made it to the finals. So our guy Bo Cruz is getting some love in international competition, as well as Bleacher report making an interesting redraft for Scottie, our Rookie of the Year, Scottie Barnes' class. So a whole bunch of stuff to dive into. Without further ado, let's dive straight into it. Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, breaking down the latest Toronto Raptors news. And folks, we're marching our way towards 26,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, it would help us out big time. So appreciate that. But let's dive into the news, because this one was pretty interesting looking at it yesterday. And it's the Toronto Raptors just missing out on free agent Dennis Schroder. Now, Dennis Schroder's a guy that is maybe polarizing in terms of his opinion, fans' opinion on him in the NBA, because at one point it looked like he was a starting caliber point guard on some upper echelon teams in the NBA, right? He had that massive season with the Oklahoma City Thunder where he was the six man of the year contention behind guys like Chris Paul and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander down there in OKC. That team almost surprised that entire NBA. So he had some hype going into him that following season, where he ended up signing with the LA Lakers coming off their NBA championship. And he was given the reins as their starting point guard, and in fact, played so well that the LA Lakers during the regular season offered him close to a $90 million contract extension. So things were looking good for Dennis Schroder, and they were looking so good, he said, you know what, I'm going to take a page out of Fred VanVleet's book, and I'm going to bet on myself. And he turned down that $90 million contract, and then what ended up happening was the LA Lakers ended up flaming out in the playoffs, and Dennis Schroder did not look too hot during that playoff series. And then rather than the LA Lakers offer him that same contract again that offseason, they didn't really offer him anything, and he ended up signing a one-year, $5 million deal with the Boston Celtics last year, and then essentially got sent to the Houston Rockets for nothing halfway through that season. So there's some weird opinions going around about Dennis Schroder. It's weird how the NBA has been valuing him, where his value lies, because he's still putting up solid stats as a point guard in the league. So there's all that stuff happening, but then EuroBasket came along, and Dennis Schroder, who represents the country of Germany, it's really taken that team, made some upsets happen during his run with Team Germany. I believe they ended up being Slovenia earlier in the tournament, and they ended up making making the semifinals. Got knocked out in the most recent game, which we'll dive into later in this video. But Schroder had an excellent performance overseas, representing his home country of Germany, and the eyes came back on Schroder. Okay, maybe this guy isn't washed. Maybe this guy isn't a complete shell of what he was a few seasons ago, even though he's putting up solid stats. And let a few Raptors fans believe maybe we should sign him. I know there's debates going on Reddit, but the consensus was, given the fact he's still a solid player, we just couldn't sign him on a minimum contract, so we shouldn't even be thinking about it. And that was my entire thought process without it as well. But then news came out yesterday. We got a Shams bomb coming out that said that Dennis Schroder was deciding between a few teams, with the LA Lakers, the Toronto Raptors, and Phoenix Suns. And then he ended up agreeing to a one-year deal with the LA Lakers that ended up being around $2.8 million. $2.8 million for a guy that is a very, very elite backup in this NBA. There's no other ways to put it, because you look at his stats. They don't lie. They're on the screen now, even in his most recent season, which is a bit down from the peak of his career, the absolute peak he had with OKC. But last season, averaged 13.5 points per game, close to 5 assists, 3 rebounds. Was a solid three-point shooter himself, not shooting about 34% from the three-point line. Nothing too crazy, nothing too dramatic, but a guy that could certainly come in. And if you're getting 13 points per game off your bench, from a guy like Dennis Schroder that you can rely upon to give solid minutes, give a breather to Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., that could have been huge for this Toronto Raptors team. So what I'm saying here in this video is, how did we not pay more than $2.8 million? Now, Ben, you might be saying, Ben, we couldn't have signed him. Our roster's full. You cut maybe a couple deep bench guys for a guy like Dennis Schroder, who is a guaranteed piece in your rotation. Schroder would certainly, without a doubt, eclipse guys like Delano Bant and Malachi Flynn and all that sort of stuff. Kem Birch, guys like that to surely get minutes in a playoff series, right? Schroder's a guy that you can rely upon to at least be a role player in those situations. So why wouldn't we maybe try to make a minor trade, flip Kem Birch's contract for something, flip a couple guys so we open up a roster space and bring in Dennis Schroder? I don't know, because $2.8 million, if that's all it took, if that's all the cap that we had to clear, we still have a bit of our MLE left, so we could have brought in Schroder with that extra money, right? Not got over the hard cap. I think beside Ujiri, I guess it was Schroder's decision. We would have done this if he ended up deciding coming to Toronto, but I think we should have pushed a little bit harder to really bolster our bench heading into this season, because we want to make a deep playoff push, and we have that question mark at our backup point guard right now behind Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. I think Dennis Schroder would have been a really nice acquisition. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. How much would you have been willing to give up to acquire Schroder? Like, what deep benches piece would you have cut? How much would you have given him? Let me know in the comments down below. But we also have some positives, right? The Raptors missing out, but we hopped in. We won a couple guys this offseason, balling out in EuroLeague. And the main guy is Bo Cruz, because Team Spain ended up actually knocking out Germany's squad in the semifinals of the EuroBasket tournament. And our guy Bo Cruz ended up having a solid performance. And you can see the box score for this team right there. At the bottom, Juancho Hernan-Gomez had, in this game, looking at the points, there it is, 13 points. Shot 5 of 6 from the middies, not knocking down that many threes, but, you know, in 21 minutes of action, 13 points on that efficient shooting, especially from inside the arc. That's pretty solid. 2 rebounds, you know, got a foul there. You love to see that. Got a block, was a plus for the game. But Juancho out there is you know, it's nice to see him balling out. But the player you might miss in this box score, that if you didn't catch it, you know, obviously formerly a Toronto Raptor, Lorenzo Brown really stole the show for this team. Former G League MVP, I believe, for the Toronto Raptors. 29 points, 11 of 17 from the field, 3 of 7 from the three-point line, got 6 assists, 4 turnovers. But Lorenzo Brown's a guy that really didn't show a lot when he was on the Toronto Raptors team, the opportunities and the minutes that he received. But certainly a guy that, for our 905 squad, when he plays in international basketball, he can certainly ball out. And I'm happy to see Lorenzo Brown thriving, because he seemed like a cool guy. Just a deep bench piece that I think a lot of Raptors fans forgot about, but it's definitely I don't know, I'd be open to a Lorenzo Brown reunion. But him, Juancho ended up playing well, and then Coach Scoliola, I always butcher the pronunciation there, but he was running some box ones as well, shaking out some of those Nick Nurse old plays from the NBA Finals, running some box ones in international action. You love to see it. So shout out Spain. They're going to be facing France now in the finals for EuroBasket. Definitely some fun basketball to watch. They'll be taking on guys like Rudy Gobert, Evan Fournier. So that should be a fun matchup. Even though guys like Giannis, Jokic, Doncic, they're all out, but there's still some fun action to be seen over in EuroBasket. But the next thing we're talking about is Bleacher Report having a very interesting redraft of Scottie Barnes' class, because this is obviously a controversial draft to sort of have an opinion on, to have a take on, because there's a lot of Cavs fans out there that think Evan Mobley should have been Rookie of the Year last season. Obviously, us as Raptors fans, we know it deservingly went to Scottie Barnes. But then you project the future of these guys. How will they develop? Mobley's obviously the big that relies on more players. Scottie's long himself, an elite defender that can handle the rock. And then you have enigmas like Cade Cunningham, who was injured to start last season, ended up turning it up in the second half of the year, but had the ball in his hands consistently, but can knock down the three, is certainly going to be a great player himself. And then Jalen Green, who was definitely the worst out of the top 4 picks starting off the year, but really came on in the later half of the season for the Houston Rockets. So you have a lot of interesting guys that you can have heavy debates on. And we broke it down in the last video, an interesting debate between Scottie Barnes and Evan Mobley. There was a ranking, if you didn't check out the video, of the top players under the age of 25 in the NBA that HoopsHype ended up interviewing NBA executives. Scottie Barnes was ranked 7th. Evan Mobley was ranked 4th. They were all ranked above some established guys like Trae Young and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which I thought was interesting. And even though I definitely rock with Scottie over those guys, usually these lists end up going with the more established players, but I digress on that point. Bleacher Report jumped on the hype. They jumped on the debate wagon and ended up giving their own opinions on redrafting the 2021 NBA draft. And I'm not going through the list like I did in the most recent video, but at the fourth pick, at the fifth pick, they had, speaking of Team Germany, Franz Wagner, which makes sense. He played really well for the Orlando Magic last season. Some Magic fans think that the Orlando Franz is better than Scottie. Completely dumb, but I think Franz is a great player. So, the fourth pick, they put Jalen Green, which makes sense. He was definitely a tier below the top 3 guys in that draft class. Now, usually when you see redrafts or opinions, it's Scottie Barnes and Evan Mobley in the top 1 or 2. And they sometimes get flipped. Obviously, us as Raptors fans, as I said, Scottie Barnes is clearly the guy. But you see the arguments on both sides. You're not going to knock any opinion on it. But Bleacher Report went an interesting direction. They put Evan Mobley at 3. They put Scottie at 2. And they put Cade Cunningham at 1. So am I taking Cade Cunningham at this point over Evan Mobley and Scottie Barnes? I do think he became a little bit underrated just due to the fact he was injured starting last season. He's definitely a great scorer, definitely a great shooter, but you look at the two-way potential for guys like Mobley, especially Scottie, right? Scottie being able to facilitate, much better passer than Cade. Outside of shooting, there's not really a skill I'd trust Cade Cunningham to develop more than Scottie Barnes going forward. And looking at Scottie Barnes' jump shot development over the course of this offseason, I'm not even sure I'm sold on that long-term wise. So putting Cade Cunningham above Evan Mobley and Scottie Barnes is a wild take. I'm happy that Bleacher Report, I'm rocking out with Scottie over Mobley, but let me know what you guys think on their specific rankings of those guys, because interest. Maybe they're just looking for people. They're always looking for people like me to react to all their stuff, to juice up their lists, juice up their views, but that's a hot take. That's a hot take, throwing Cade over those guys there. And the final thing we're discussing, the final thing we're talking about is just a weird rivalry. It popped up big time while I was in California. I didn't get to react to all the drama, all the news, but the Oklahoma City Thunder fans, and it popped actually a little bit before when Raptors fans were mad. Canadian fans were mad when Oklahoma City pulled Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from representing Team Canada for the FIBA International Games that have an effect on how we qualify going forward. So after Chet Holmgren went down with injury, they pulled Shai from the team. I didn't know they could do that, but it was an agreement. The Raptors ended up winning all the games without Shai, so it didn't matter. Didn't matter even, and Shai got some good run against some tougher teams, tougher opponents, so it didn't end up being a big deal in the first place. But Oklahoma City Thunder fans were mad at Raptors fans for just trashing on OKC, for constantly tanking and not playing our guy, not letting him thrive with the squad, not even letting him play for his international team, and they became very defensive. Now, Raptors fans, obviously we're a big fan base. We got a couple guys that love to go at people and frustrate other fan bases, fans of other teams, but sucks to suck, other fans, right? We're a passionate fan base, right? We love our Toronto Raptors, but we had a weird beef popping up with Oklahoma City, whereas I think if you looked at a fan base overlap, I think a lot of Raptors fans a couple months ago even, right, would have said OKC is one of their top 3 favorite teams, top 4 teams in the league, because they have Dort, they have Shai, they have a fun, up-and-coming, young, promising squad. So that beef sort of picked up, and then on Reddit yesterday, they had debates about who our biggest rivals are. Obviously, the Sixers, given that ugly playoff series we had recently and the just wild one we had back in 2019. There's some bad blood between Raptors and Sixers fans. Apparently, the rivalry with Milwaukee has cooled off. It's tempered. We definitely have a rivalry with that team. We played them multiple years in the playoffs, but people were saying that that rivalry is cordial now, that we respect Giannis and stuff. I think when we play them in the playoffs again, things will get heated up. People don't remember how we were trashing on Mike Budenholzer, the owner's daughter, the fans for being defensive over Mike Budenholzer, complaining about Drake's massages and stuff. I don't know. So just gave me a little thought process. I want to ask you guys, who do you think is our biggest rival? And in NBA Rivals Week, apparently the Golden State Warriors are one of our biggest rivals. So I don't know how all that works. Obviously, pretty well every team in the Eastern Conference hates Boston. The Wizards were a team that I dislike. The Brooklyn Nets are my least favorite team due to their deep, long rivalry with the Raptors in the past couple decades. So let me know who you guys think are the Toronto Raptors' biggest rivals. But that's enough for me rambling in this video. You guys are best to make this far. As said, we're on the road to 26,000 subscribers. So if you made it this far in the video, definitely hit that subscribe button. It helps us out big time. Anyways, I'm signing out. You guys are the best. Check us out on everything. I butchered the ending. You guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.